everyone, my name is Erica. I am going to be your virtual tour guide today. Welcome to the Colorado Wolf and Wildlife Center. We are located in Divide, Colorado in the gorgeous Rocky Mountains. We are an educational facility and we like to teach people about wolves, coyotes, and foxes and some of the problems that they face in our world today. So we're going to start off by talking about the history of wolves in the United States. Here I have a map of the lower 48 states prior to European establishment. There were three types of wolves: timber wolves or gray wolves in blue. Depending on where you come from, it will change what you call them. In Colorado, we call them gray wolves. In green, we have Mexican gray wolves, and in red, we have red wolves. There were an estimated 450,000 wolves roaming the wild before settlers arrived here. But we're going to go back in time to the 13th century where the bubonic plague was happening. So many people were dying that they were not able to bury all of their dead. They were being left out in mass graves on the outskirts of the cities. This was a free food source for a lot of wildlife, including your large predators. Unfortunately, wolves were then negatively associated with the plague. Our settlers were also raised on stories like Three Little Pigs, Little Red Riding Hood, and who's the bad guy in these stories? The wolf. So when our settlers arrived here, they were very scared of wolves. They saw the wolves we had and decided to get rid of them. There was also a bounty being provided by the government, so they exterminated wolves as they moved west across the states. By about the mid-1900s, there were only 300 to 500 wolves left in the wild. So it was a very successful extermination. A little too successful. They started looking around, realized there weren't very many wolves left, and maybe they should stop killing them. In 1973, Richard Nixon signed the Endangered Species Act into law, and in 1974, wolves were one of the first animals to be put on that list. Which was great because this did bring along some reintroduction programs. The most famous of these reintroductions happened in Yellowstone National Park. You may have heard of this reintroduction before. So prior to 1995, the park had been absent of wolves for quite a few decades. Wolves are not only an apex predator, but a keystone species, meaning when you remove them from an ecosystem, it will affect everything down the food chain. The elk populations were growing through the roof. They were overgrazing, leaving no plants and therefore no roots to hold the ground together. The ground began to erode, waterways were drying up or spilling over, and so plants and animals were starting to leave the park. In 1995, wolves were captured in British Columbia and Alberta and reintroduced into the park, and they started to reverse this process. They decreased the elk populations. They made the herds healthier because they were picking off the sick and the weak, leaving the strong and healthy to reproduce. They also moved the herds, which allowed the foliage to grow back. And within 20 years after the wolf reintroduction, the park had a regain of about 350 plant and animal species. There's a really cool video on YouTube called How Wolves Change Rivers. It's only 4 minutes long and we highly recommend it as it is a good explanation of this trophic cascade that I just told you about. Now I am going to switch our maps and we're going to look at where our current wolf populations are in the United States. So you'll notice there is a lot less color on our map today. Our major gray wolf populations are going to be the northern Rockies with about 1,600 wolves, and in the Great Lakes with about 4,200 wolves. Now if you remember on the first map that we had this big red section, that has been reduced down to that tiny dot in North Carolina. What happened was in the 60s, the red wolf populations were getting smaller and smaller due to predator control programs. So they went out and captured about 17 of them from the wild and started breeding them in captivity. In 1980, they were considered extinct in the wild. In 1987, 4 pair were released into North Carolina. Their population started to grow, things were looking pretty good, and we forgot about them. Their population peaked at about 130 individuals in 2006. Today, there are 7 left in the wild. Now, a lot of people have never heard of the red wolf before, which is sad because they are endemic to the United States, meaning they're not found anywhere else in the world. This also means there are 7 red wolves left in the world. There is no release program currently happening and this population gets smaller every year. So at this rate, this animal will probably go extinct during our lifetime. And then in the green is our current Mexican gray wolf population. There's approximately 150 of them on the border of New Mexico and Arizona. I will talk more about them when we are out on the tour trail, as we do have two that you'll get to see today. But both the red wolves and Mexican gray wolves are endangered animals, yet they are also being hunted daily due to loopholes in our laws. It is also becoming extremely difficult to release new wolves into the wild due to concerns from the local people as well as money. In fact, just last year, the Trump administration moved forward with taking wolves off the endangered species list. What this means is that the control of wolf populations moves over to the states. Each state gets to decide how many wolves they want in their state. If they have more than that, they can get rid of the extra by opening up hunting and trapping seasons. This did go into effect on January 4th of this year. Prior to that, there were states that were already selling hunting tags or licenses for wolves. This included states like Utah and North Dakota, which if you look at this map, they don't even have wolf populations. So this just goes to show that deep-seated hatred of wolves that is still ingrained in so many people. So hopefully by the end of this tour today, you guys will understand how important wolves are to our ecosystems, but also that they are not big, bad, and scary animals. And then we ask for your help in spreading the word about wolves and their importance, and the best way to learn how to live with these animals. All right, guys, we are going to head out and start meeting some of our animals. So this is Red and Scarlet. They are red foxes. Red foxes are the most widespread land omnivore in the world. They can be found at your highest elevations all the way down to sea level. They will eat anything. That is why they can be found anywhere. Male foxes are called dogs. Female foxes are called vixens. And their babies are called kits with a T. Red foxes also make 26 different vocalizations. So they are very talkative little animals. Now we also have a swift fox here. His name is Dusty. Swift foxes are nocturnal, so he's not going to be out and about for us to video him today. But swift foxes are actually part of the species survival program, which means they are being bred in captivity so that they can be released back into the wild to help increase their wild populations. They are currently considered threatened. Now we don't keep all of our foxes together because swift foxes are quite a bit smaller, and red foxes can be sometimes bullies like you're seeing right now. So we want to keep them separate so Dusty can live a peaceful life without them. Now because our swift foxes are part of that species survival program, we do actually breed them here. Our last litter of kits was born in 2019. So being omnivores, this means that foxes eat a wide variety of things from small mammals and birds to reptiles and amphibians, fruits, nuts, berries, and seeds and grasses. They also have vertical pupils, and this helps them have really good night vision since they are nocturnal animals. Now, Red and Scarlet are very active little guys, but we are going to move along and start talking about our wolves. So in here we have Kenai and McCooey. McCooey is a 7-year-old grizzled gray wolf, which is a very common coat color for gray wolves. They can be any color from a very light cream to a very dark black. We will see an example of quite a few different shades of gray wolves today. We also have Kenai, who is a 7-year-old British Columbian wolf. Now, both of these wolves are very average size wolves. Generally, your females will weigh between 70 to 90 pounds, and your males will weigh between 90 to 130 pounds. They can stand between 26 to 32 inches tall at the shoulder and between 5.5 to 6 feet long from nose tip to tail tip. With Kenai being a British Columbian wolf, this is a subspecies of the gray wolf. They can get a little bit larger, up to about 150 pounds, but Kenai weighs in at about 105. Now the British Columbian wolves used to range all throughout Canada and Alaska, but they were almost hunted to extinction, and today their range is very small, from the Vancouver Isles to the southwest corner of Alaska. So Arenda here is a 3-year-old gray wolf, and she is our most recent ambassador wolf, which means she used to be able to come out of her enclosure, walk on a leash, ride in a bus. She has been to Colorado Springs, where she met 150 people, gave kisses, and took treats. So wolves are very shy, cautious animals, and having a wolf that is willing to go out places and meet people can be very difficult. It does take a very special personality as well as a lot of training. Wolves will start to sexually and mentally mature around the age of 2. They gain more of those wild wolf instincts. So the human world is full of a lot of scary things. So just a couple months shy of turning 2, Arenda did retire herself from being an ambassador wolf. She still does like to meet people inside of her enclosure, and she is very well known for her open mouth loving kisses. We also have Arenda's boyfriend Isa in here, who is a 4-year-old Arctic wolf. Now, Arctic wolves can be found in northern Canada, Alaska, parts of Greenland, Iceland, and northern Europe. Due to where they live, their food choices are very limited. They will eat things like caribou, musk oxen, Arctic hare, and lemming. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with what a musk oxen is, these animals literally weigh a ton. So imagine an 83-pound Arenda trying to take down a 1-ton animal. She's going to have a lot better chance of catching that prey if she has a pack to take down that prey with her. Now, when it comes to wolf pups who are outside of mom's den but not quite old enough to hunt yet, they will still eat meat. Other members of the pack will come back from a hunt and offer them regurgitated meat that they have partially consumed. The pups will lick and bite at the adults' muzzles, which will stimulate this regurgitation. Arctic wolves are one of the least threatened subspecies of gray wolf, although they do face some of the largest threats. One of these is loss of habitat. This is due to both climate change and exploitation of natural resources. Now, because their space is shrinking, the Arctic wolves and the polar bears are now fighting for not only food and territory. And generally, when wolves and bears fight, somebody comes out not unharmed. So Wiley and Maya are 2 coyotes. First of all, let's talk about how to tell the difference between a wolf and a coyote. Coyotes are going to be a lot smaller. They weigh roughly 20 to 40 pounds, whereas again, your wolves will weigh anywhere from 70 to 130 pounds. But also, coyotes are going to have a different facial structure. So they have a long, narrow snout with a small nose pad. They also have larger ears compared to their head, whereas your wolves are going to have a short, broad snout with a large nose pad and smaller ears compared to their head. Coyotes are a very common animal across the United States. They are the main predator in Colorado currently. They are also one of the most hated animals throughout the United States. We actually kill about 400,000 coyotes every year. And a lot of times people will wonder, if we're killing so many, why are their populations not getting any smaller? This is due to something called compensatory rebound, meaning when you kill an adult coyote and not also their food source, you've now made that food source available for their neighbor coyote who, say, has 5 pups to feed. Now, instead of only 2 of those pups surviving, all 5 are going to survive. Then you have 5 coyotes instead of 1. So killing them actually increases their population. We don't recommend it. There are proven non-lethal ways to get rid of coyotes. This is called hazing. Hazing is very simple. It can even be fun. You can shake a soda can full of rocks at a coyote, pop open and close an umbrella, put flags on your fence line, motion detector lights, air horns, put your coat over your head, wave your arms, and scream and yell. Coyotes are neophobic, meaning afraid of new things. So anything new or different you put out is going to ward them off. You do have to be consistent, and it may take a week or 2, but once they leave, they're generally done for life. So they're not going to come back to see if that threat is still there. If everyone in a neighborhood and a town would work together, we could haze coyotes back into their natural environments, which would decrease the food and space available to them, which would decrease those populations. We don't want to get rid of coyotes completely. They are very important for our ecosystems. They make excellent rodent control. One adult coyote could eat up to 1,500 rodents in a year. They're also really good at helping control the spread of disease. There have been coyotes that ate rodents carrying the bubonic plague or the hantavirus. Their immune system is so great that that disease is not lethal to them. And when it exits out in their scat and is hit by the UV rays, it is no longer transferable. Now, coyotes are not pack animals. They generally tend to be by themselves unless you have a mom with her pups. Now, if prey sources are scarce, they may pack up to take down a larger animal, but then they're going to split up once they do get that food. Coyotes can be mistaken for wolves sometimes by the sounds that they make. Although coyotes do not howl, they do more of a yipping or barking sound. Coyotes are also able to make it sound like there are more of them around than there really are. So this is why people also mistake a single coyote for a pack of coyotes, because they allow their voices to travel. So here we have Chakra. She is a black phase wolf, which means she was born all black, and as she gets older, she'll turn a silver gray color. You can see some of that silver coming in on her chin and her chest. And this is actually a pretty common coat color to see in the wild, anywhere from 30 to 50% of the time, depending on where you are looking at your wolves. Now, wolves are crepuscular animals, meaning they are most active at dawn and dusk. And so this is when they are going to do most of their communicating. I'm sure you guys are familiar with wolves howling, but a lot of people don't realize that this is their biggest form of communication. Anytime that they need to talk about something, they are going to howl. They will howl with their own pack if they have been split up and they need to find each other. When they are getting ready to go on a hunt, researchers have also found that wolves in a pack that have a closer bond will howl with each other more often. They will howl with other packs to say, hey, get out of our territory. Wolves will also bark, but it's a pretty rare sound to hear as it is generally used as an alert call. Because wolves are crepuscular, they are more fine-tuned to the low light conditions, so they see best in those dawn and dusk times. Their vision is not their strongest sense. It's actually going to be their hearing and their smell. Wolves can hear another howl from 10 miles away in open space and 6 miles away in the forest. They can also smell another animal from a mile away. Each wolf has their own howl as well as their own sense. So they are just as unique and individual as people are. Like we have our own fingerprints that distinguish us, a wolf's howl can distinguish them from a pack as well as their scents can. Now, I will tell you that wolves do not howl at the moon. This is a myth. The reason that whole wolves howling at the moon thing probably came about is because when there is a full moon, there is more light for longer. The wolves are going to be out using that light and therefore communicating more. Now they do stretch that neck up towards the sky when they howl, not because they're looking at the moon, but because it actually helps that sound travel quite a bit farther. Chakra's boyfriend in here is Raksha. He is another one of our 2 Arctic wolves. Now Arctic wolves have a lot of special adaptations to help them withstand the cold temperatures of the places that they live. Their guard hairs, which is the outer layer of fur, are hollow. It will trap heat around the outside of their body and act like an insulating winter coat. They produce a lot of extra oil in their fur, which makes them nice and water resistant. They're going to have shorter ears and a shorter snout to help with heat retention. Arctic wolves do not shiver until -70 degrees. Gray wolves in general do not shiver until -40 degrees. So either way, these animals are built for extreme colds. The Arctic wolves have extra fur in their paw, which helps a lot with heat retention as well as traction. They're going to have snowshoes for paws, meaning their paws are going to spread nice and wide. They can measure 6 inches across, And this allows them to walk on top of the snow rather than falling through, which can give them an advantage when they are chasing their prey. So Micah here is 10 years old, and he is a really good example of the body structure of the gray wolf. So notice how lean and narrow he is, how close those front legs are, because they have a deep, narrow chest. All of this allows for them to be able to run great distances. At a 5-mile-per-hour pace, a wolf can chase a herd of prey for 40 miles and not get tired. They will chase that herd of prey until the weak, the old, and the sick get tired and fall behind. Then they can reach speeds of up to 37 miles an hour to take down their prey. The reason that they hunt this way is to prevent injury to themselves. So if a wolf was to go after the biggest, healthiest animal in a herd, they're a lot more likely to get hurt. If they were to get kicked in the head, that could be a death sentence. Even a broken leg could make it very difficult for them to hunt, so they will be very careful about which animals in a herd that they try and take down. Due to these factors, wolves are not killing machines. They just can't be. Their biology keeps limits on the amount of animals that they are able to take down. So they're not likely to have large impacts on prey populations, but more of just minimal impacts throughout the year. You may also notice that Micah has a really big head. That big head houses a 30% larger brain than your domestic dog. It also houses a lot of jaw muscles. So to give you a little perspective, the average dog has about 320 pounds per square inch of jaw strength, and the African lion has about 900. A young, healthy wolf can reach up to 1,500 pounds per square inch of jaw strength. But even with that immense jaw strength, they're only successful at catching their prey 15 to 20% of the time. So more often than not, they will actually go hungry. They could go for 2 weeks without eating anything, and when they do get a kill, they can eat 20 pounds of meat at one time. Navi is another black phase wolf. He is 10 years old, and I want you guys to take a good look at his eyes. He has some very striking yellow eyes. Now, wolves can have any shade of eye color from yellow to brown. They will not have blue eyes. When wolf pups are born, they will be born blind, deaf, and weigh 1 pound. Their eyes will open at about 10 days old, and they will be blue. This is actually common in a lot of mammals. About 3 to 4 months, their eyes will change color, and that will become the color of their eyes for the rest of their life. Now, Navi also has some very extra large paws. Wolves will spend up to 1/3 of their lives on their feet, so their big paws help to hold all of that weight. Their front paws are larger than their back paws, so that when they walk, their back paw will land in the exact footprint left by their front paw. This helps them be more efficient and conserve energy when running through snow. Tala is one of our smallest wolves. She weighs between 55 to 60 pounds, but size is not an indication of strength with our wolves. Now, for enrichment with our animals, we will take some of them for walks on a leash and harness, for mental stimulation, or to rotate the enclosures that they are in. Tala requires 2 staff members, and it is running at full speed all the way to our day spa. Now, our day spa is just a spare enclosure where animals can go, get out, smell something new and different, and have a little more space to run around. We try and provide as much mental stimulation for our animals as we can, since they do have to live their lives in captivity. This involves different types of toys, scents, and games for their minds. We have our 2 Mexican gray wolves, Dakota and Diego. You will notice that I am not in the enclosure with these wolves, and this is because they are a critically endangered species. They are owned by the federal government, so we just keep them here, and there are a couple requirements in order to be able to have a critically endangered species. Specifically to the Mexican gray wolves, we cannot socialize them. So we don't call them by name, we don't go and interact with them like I have with our other wolves. We don't give them dog treats or dog toys. Any enrichment we give them has to be something that they would naturally come across in the wild. And this is because at any point in time, they could be released back into the wild. So we want them to behave as much like wild wolves as we can. But due to the amount of people that they see here and their lack of genetic diversity, it is unlikely they will ever be released into the wild. I say lack of genetic diversity because the Mexican gray wolves actually all stem from one wolf. So the Mexican gray wolves were hunted to extinction in the United States. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service paired up with their Mexican counterpart and went down to Mexico to see if they could find any to start a captive breeding program. They were able to come up with 7 Mexican gray wolves. So all Mexican gray wolves alive today are related to those same 7 wolves. And this is not good for their genetics. But there are different programs happening to try and help increase their genetic diversity. One of these is called cross-fostering, where they will take captive-born pups and swap them with wild-born pups. This will put new genetics in both the captive and the wild populations. Wolves are one of the very few predators that will take in young that are not their own, so it does help this process go a little more smoothly. All of our animals here have been born and raised in captivity except for our 2 Mexican gray wolves. They were part of that cross-fostering program. So they were taken from the wild as pups, and 2 pups were put in to replace them. So it is likely they will spend the rest of their time here with us. But down in New Mexico, where they do have Mexican gray wolves living in the wild, there is still very much that fear of wolves. There is actually a county that is so scared of wolves, they have built something called kid cages. So at the bus stop, their kids will wait in an enclosed chain link cage so that the wolves don't come eat them. In the last 150 years, there have been 0 human deaths by wolves in the lower 48 states. So this is a very unnecessary fear. In fact, every year, roughly 11 people are killed by vending machine. What I'm saying is there are a lot of things out there way more likely to kill you than wolves. Wolves are very shy, cautious animals. Due to our mass extermination of them, they've actually taught their young to be scared of humans because humans mean death. So healthy wild wolves are not going to attack people unprovoked. There's also that fear of wolves taking livestock. This is called depredation. The Department of Agriculture does keep track of these numbers, and they have found that wolves account for 0.2% of cattle losses prior to the slaughterhouse. Even in places outside of Yellowstone where you have large wolf populations as well as large ranching populations, wolves only account for 0.1% of cattle losses. So again, this is a very unnecessary fear that comes from a misunderstanding of these animals. So Amrock and Coda are another pair of our wolves. You may have noticed at this point that all of our wolves are paired up. There are a couple reasons why we do this. So pairs rather than packs due to space. In the wild, wolf packs can range in size anywhere from 4 to 15 wolves, and they will have a home territory of over a couple hundred square miles. If they have disagreements or they're ready to go start their own family, they will disperse. Which means if we kept a large pack in our enclosures, we would end up with a lot more disagreements and fights because they can't get away from each other. Most of our wolves are in a male-female pair because wolves will mate for life in the wild. So we want them to be able to form that emotional connection with each other even though they will not be breeding. There are a couple reasons why we do not breed our wolves. One is space. So we're almost at capacity with our wolves, and wolf litters can range in size from 4 to 6 pups, which means if we bred, we would run out of room really fast. But also, as you can see, our wolves are very social to people, and we would not want to release this type of wolf into the wild, which means any wolves we bred would have to stay in captivity, and there's already plenty of wolves in captivity. Wolves live in packs, and those packs are actually just giant families. There is a structure or hierarchy in that pack to help everybody get along and make sure everybody is doing their own part or doing their own job. So you have 2 alpha wolves, and it's not necessarily going to be the biggest, meanest, or strongest wolves, but generally the oldest and the wisest. This is because the alpha wolves are just the parents of the pack, so they are the leaders and the breeders. They are the only wolves in the pack that will breed, so that no inbreeding happens. So underneath your alpha wolves, you have beta wolves who help a lot with hunting and protecting the pack. Underneath beta wolves, you have subordinates, which is all of your siblings, maybe an aunt or an uncle. And at the very bottom of the hierarchy, you have the Omega wolf. The Omega wolf is the pack babysitter. They tend to get picked on a lot, and they're the last one allowed to eat if there is enough food to go around. But the Omega wolf can leave their family pack, go find another wolf of the opposite sex, and form a new pack of their own. And this is a common way for new wolf packs to form in the wild. Kikoa is our oldest wolf. He is 13 years old. The average lifespan of a wolf in captivity is about 12 years, although we have seen wolves live 16 to 17 years. Now the average lifespan of a wild wolf is only 4 to 6 years. It is a very difficult life to be a wild wolf. The number one killer of wild wolves is fighting between packs. The second most common cause of death is disease and starvation, and the third is humans. So wolves in captivity don't face any of these threats and therefore can live quite a bit longer. Now, Kikoa is also our heaviest wolf. He actually only weighs in at 115 pounds. But wolves have a double layer coat. So the outer layer of fur is called the guard hairs, and this is the water protective barrier to keep them nice and dry. Then you have that under fur, which is like a thick insulating coat. It will grow continuously throughout the winter, and then they will shed that out once in the spring. Now in some places their fur can be 6 inches long, so it does make them look a lot bigger than they actually are. Now we do always like to end our tours with a howl. We talked about why wolves howl, and before I get them howling for you guys, I want you to be listening for something while they are howling. Remember that each wolf has their own individual voice, so you can listen for those different voices. But also, a single wolf will usually only howl for about 5 seconds at a time. They will howl, pause, listen to what the other wolves are saying, and then howl in response. This makes those howl sessions seem like they are lasting a lot longer, but this is because everybody is chiming in at a different time. I am back here with Navi and Tala because Tala is our gossip girl. She likes to do most of our howling. So I'm going to howl, and hopefully these guys are going to respond, and you guys can listen to those awesome howling sounds. Ready? Well, did you hear all of those individual voices? I hope you guys learned a lot of things about wolves today. Thank you for watching.